Stardate 5022 AZ. In distant space, far from Earth, a massive Class B freighter ship is rumbling silently through the blank, black space between stars. Its cargo, precious metals, and a sample collection of rare H2O deposits, found on a distant, newly discovered planet, is headed back towards Earth. The ship's exhausted crew is fast asleep in a state of frozen hibernation. Those who are left awake to operate the ship in case of emergencies are not exactly the cream of the crop. They're the skeleton crew. The night shift. The ones who take over when the real experts are ready for rest. Their job is to keep the ship in one piece until they reach Earth. As a reward for their diligence, they get a 1 credit bonus per cycle. Barely enough to pay a week's H2O bills on Earth. But at least the commodity is free while they're on board. While back home, people are fighting wars for the clear liquid stuff, essential for our survival. Another item of cargo is on board as well. A mysterious substance found during drilling. A viscous, black goo, which no one could identify. Even Whiskey, the team's most seasoned science officer. It is that mysterious black ooze which will eventually bring about the total annihilation of Earth. Although the unwitting crew does not realize that yet. None of them are prepared to see what will happen when that black ooze reaches room temperature, when it comes into contact with air. But they will find out soon enough. There wasn't a crack in the glass, or any other indication of damage to the Class 12 containment vessel, but the black ooze had gotten out nonetheless. The viscous liquid dripped slowly down to the floor where a puddle had formed. Large bubbles bloomed and popped on the surface of it, letting out puffs of acrid-smelling yellow smoke.
You wake up resin or not?
We clean it up ourselves, that's what we do.
But
Nah, no buts. This ain't nothing, just a little oil spill. We ain't waking up resin for an oil spill. We get the foamy stuff, we clean it up ourselves.
this ain't no oil though, Bragg. It's some damn alien shit. Whiskey said when we loaded up, boss back home wanted to look at it. It's something pseudo-biological.
Right, pseudo. See, you said it yourself. Pseudo means ain't quite, meaning this ain't quite alive. It's just oil, jammers. Pseudo oil if you want to get real scientific about it. Now calm yourself down and get the foamy stuff. Come on now, quit gawking at me and go. Why you got that look in your eye all of a sudden like ain't nobody home?
Home.
Look at that. You got it on your shoes now because you wasn't paying attention. I'll get the damn foamy stuff myself. Just stand back, will you? Stand over there. Good. Just wait there and I'll be right back. Losing it, man. I'm telling you, I do everything around this place. If it wasn't for me, the ship would fall to pieces.
Resin woke up to the sound of an alarm screeching through his earplugs. He hit the silence button on his comms unit without really analyzing the words flashing in the bright red dialogue box on his AR display. Brags and jammers would deal with it, whatever it was. That's what maintenance guys were for, after all. He hated the earplugs. They made his ears hurt, and they never quite fit right. But it's all he could do to block out the sounds of the constant overhead chimes and occasional alarms that would wake him from the dead of sleep. The old ship was falling apart. Everyone knew it, but the cheap bastards back home would do nothing to fix it. Too much money. So they were left driving a scrap heap that could barely make it to a platinum-rich asteroid and back, without some sort of urgent repair being needed upon return. A stitch in time saves 9, his father had always said, an old expression passed down for centuries. He guessed that the hotshots back at corporate had never heard it before. They were intent on fixing only what was critically broken, spending no money whatsoever on upkeep or sensible upgrades to the vessel. If it was his ship, he'd do what was right. He overheard they wanted $8 million to overhaul the hyperdrive, and that was just for starters. The whole interior of the freighter was built for utility, not for comfort. He understood that. Not having decent furniture or beds, that was one thing. But nothing worked properly anymore. Not even the important stuff, like the electrolysis machine that created their H2O. They'd once had to drink their own piss for the tail end of a trip back, because the thing had completely broken down. The rest of the time they were rationing so it didn't overheat. He threw on a shirt and a pair of pants, and went out towards the common room. It wasn't time for morning rations yet, but that was one of the benefits of being on skeleton crew while everyone else was asleep. You could fudge the rules. And you could take double helpings and nobody said anything because they were all in REM.
Early breakfast again?
Zeta asked, coming down the hallway, grinning.
And I suppose you're just going this way for a drink of H2O?
As long as there's some coffee brewed into that H2O and a bit of cream to boot. Eggs will be nice too. And bacon.
Look who has the jokes now. When we get home and we get paid, I'll take you out for all the bacon and eggs you want. How about that?
Resin, are you asking me out?
You wish, weirdo. I'm just being a good boss. Trying to motivate my subordinates. That's all.
Wow. You will never let me forget the fact that you beat me out for Watch Commander, will you? Are you honestly enjoying the extra 12 credits per cycle that much? Considering all the extra responsibility, I'm kind of glad I didn't get the job.
Droids and maintenance guys take care of everything, Zeta. There is no added responsibility. Just those sweet, sweet credits to look forward to. And bacon and eggs, of course. What the hell is this now? Braggs, don't tell me there's another spill down in the accelerator chamber. Please. Just anything but that.
Braggs was coming out of the clean storage section with a large canister of foams.
It ain't that, boss. Just a little whoopsie over in storage. Gonna get it squared away right now. Jammers is over there keeping an eye on things, making sure all is hunky-dory.
Great. Just let me know when you've got it. Wait. What kind of whoopsie are we talking about anyways? The kind I need to fill out an incident report for? Because I don't like that kind of whoopsie.
I'll take care of it. Didn't I say I was gonna take care of it?
Call me when it's done. And you're gonna fill me in on the details so we don't keep having these little slip-ups, okay? There's too many holes on this ship. We're starting to take on water.
No water in space, boss.
Figure of speech, Braggs.
Right.
Jammers wasn't there when Braggs got back to storage bay.
That damn idiot. I tell him to stay put, and what does he do? Probably wanders off trailing this shit everywhere on his boot like a dog turd and leaves me to clean up the mess afterward. Well, I don't care. This is the last straw. That son of a bitch is going to get a punch in the tit when I see him next.
Braggs was muttering to himself. He walked over to the spreading puddle of black ooze with the canister of Class 8 foaming oil and organism management spray, and used it to create a barrier around the stuff. The puddle of black ooze had already spread well past where it was previously, but at least there was still a path to walk around it to get to the door at the other end of the corridor. If not for that, the mess would look even worse. He sprayed the foam all over the Class 12 containment vessel next, thinking he could use it to keep the ooze more securely within the heavy-duty container. Just as the large foams canister was nearly running dry, the alarm chime ceased on his comms device, and everything was blessedly silent once again. He let his finger relax from the trigger of the spray canister and inspected his work. It looked good to him. The foam was drying and creating a hard coating that would keep everything in check until they got back to Earth. then it would be the offload guy's problem. A nearby hatch opened and a small spherical droid flew over. It hovered in front of the foam-covered mess and began to emit a crisscrossing series of lasers, which inspected his handiwork. After a few moments of deliberation, it chimed approvingly and a green smiley face appeared on the front of the droid. Then it zoomed off to attend to other matters. Braggs dropped the foams container to the ground and let it there, in case the spill needed a top-up later on, and went walking back the way he'd come.
Finally, breakfast time.
Resin was sitting at the table in the common room with Zeta, eating their bowls of carbos, when Bragg sauntered in, his chin up and shoulders back like he had just accomplished some great feat. He grabbed a pouch from the fridge and came over to sit with them at the only table in the place, setting down his bottle of H2O with a loud clang.
Fix the problem.
It ain't chiming no more, is it?
Resin let out a sigh. Why was it always so hard to get answers around here? His attempts at common sense questioning with maintenance personnel, Braggs in particular, were always met with vagueness and low-key hostility.
So you're gonna make me play 20 questions, or you're gonna tell me why I got woken up by a level 4 breach?
It wasn't nothing the little foamy stuff couldn't fix. Just some oil, that's all.
What the hell are you talking about, Braggs? There's no oil in storage, B.
You know, that black stuff in the heavy-duty containment vessel the whiskey was so excited about.
Resin and Zeta dropped their spoons on the table, their jaws hanging open.
It got out.
See, the foamy stuff kept it all tidy, and now it ain't spreading around no more.
Resin had to admit, there was no sign of a leak anywhere. His heart was still pounding out of his chest, though.
What about this? It's a shoe print.
Oh, right. Well, I guess Jammers did kind of step in it. I told him to wait here, but the idiot wandered off.
He stepped in the puddle.
Well, yeah.
Resin's stomach suddenly had a lead weight inside of it, for reasons he could not discern. The whole situation was rubbing him the wrong way. The fact that they didn't truly know what the OOZE was didn't make things any easier. It certainly did nothing to reassure him. Not good. Something tells me this is very much not a good thing, he thought to himself.
Problem?
Zeta, go Hellbase. See if they've got any insights on this stuff that we don't, based on Whiskey's assessment.
He debated waking up Captain Grupe, but decided against it. His mind's eye saw the cold, steely gaze of his looking back at his own, asking a million questions, asking how he could let such a thing happen. He wanted to delay that as long as possible. Maybe indefinitely, if he could manage to cover up these idiots' mistakes. Zeta hurried off in the direction of the comm center.
Braggs, this is really important. Where the hell did Jammers go?
Resin was following the footprints. He'd given Braggs a tongue lashing for a while, then sent him as far away as possible. He told him to go search the ship and find his missing colleagues. What that moron could possibly be thinking, he had no idea. Resin was beating himself up too, though. He had slept through too many alarms, become too complacent.
I'm gonna start trying again. I can't afford to lose this job. Just let everything be okay so I don't lose this job. Please.
He sprayed the foamy stuff down on each shoe print as he walked past, but the canister was almost empty. Pretty soon he would have to go back and get a fresh bottle, assuming there even was a fresh bottle.
Resin, come in. Resin?
Zeta was talking to him through the comms device, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Barely a word of it could be made out. He spoke back to her calmly. No sense losing your shit now. You're the leader. Act like it.
Resin, come in. Resin?
Go ahead, Zeta.
The SATCOM is malfunctioning. There's all kinds of noise. I can't get anybody back at base.
Keep trying. If you don't get a response in the next 5 minutes, I'll meet you over in Cryo. I'm heading in that direction.
He kept walking along, spraying the foams every time he came across a shoe print. They were becoming faded and more difficult to see in the dim, flickering lights of the corridor. It was about time to check up on Braggs. No telling what that man would do if left to his own devices.
Braggs. Come in, Braggs. Do you hear me talking, you big dumb idiot?
He went self-consciously after saying that. Great job, Mr. Watch Commander. Way to motivate your subordinates. Where'd you learn your leadership skills anyways? A few more seconds of silence, and then Bragg's voice came over the comms device.
You're going to want to see this, boss.
Once he reached the cryo chambers, Braggs was gone. Everyone else had vanished too. Each chamber tank was empty, with no sign of the crew members who should have occupied them. Missing lights meant that the room was dark, and it was difficult to see in the confined space. At least there were very few places to hide.
Where the hell is everybody?
Zeta asked, coming in just behind him. He nearly jumped out of his skin at the sound of her, startled despite his training telling him to stay calm. He fought to speak as plainly as possible, and it came out cracking, making him sound like a teenage boy.
Not sure. They should still be in phase 2. This makes no sense.
It's like somebody just aborted the process midway through. But why would anybody do that? And who?
Jammers, I guess.
But why the hell would he do that, Resin?
I don't have the faintest idea, Zeta.
She took a deep breath and let it out, looking down at her own trembling hands as if willing them to settle.
So, what now, Watch Commander?
Zeta raced down the echoing corridor towards the bridge as fast as her feet could carry her. She thought it was wise considering the circumstances for them to stick together, but men always believe they know better, even when they're wrong. Resin was a good man and a passable leader, but no different in that regard. He had told her to secure the bridge while he went to the weapons base for supplies. The fact that cryostasis had been aborted meant serious bodily harm was possible to the crew members affected. Jammers knew that, and he had aborted anyways. He was the only one of the 4 of them who could have done it, and logic followed that if he had done that, he was not altogether in his right mind. The ooze from the containment vessel was potentially having some sort of effect on Jammers, and was making him lose his best judgment, which wasn't all that grand to begin with. And someone like that could not be allowed to enter the bridge with its sensitive equipment. They would need to locate him ASAP and secure him in lockup. Suddenly the lights in the hallway flickered and went out completely. Zeta waited for the backup power to come on. Usually only took a second. But instead the lights stayed dead. The darkness was total, suffocating in its utter blackness. She couldn't see an inch in front of her face when she lifted her hand in front of her eyes. And suddenly she was acutely aware of how precarious her situation was, floating through space on this barely functioning barge. If the lights were out, did that mean the navigational systems were too? The engine? No. She realized she could still feel the thrum of the warp drive system radiating through her feet through the center of the ship. Hopefully it was just the lights. Gradually, the afterimage of the hallway disappeared from her vision, and she was left swimming in blackness, dark as the bottom of the ocean, or the depths of space between stars.
Resin, can you hear me?
She said hesitantly into the comms device. There was no response. A soft clicking sound went quickly past her instead, then was gone in an instant. She jumped, unsure what could have been. The ship's equipment sometimes made strange noises, but she had never heard anything like that.
Brags? Jammers? Resin? Anybody?
Again, there was no answer on her comms. She remembered suddenly that the device on her wrist had an emergency light built into it. Reaching up her hand, she struggled to find the hidden button. Something sped past her again, this time closer to the ceiling, moving in the opposite direction. Finally, she found the button, and a dim light was emitted from the comms device on her wrist. Shining it forward, she began to walk again, taking a deep, shuddering breath as she did so. Her legs felt like gelatin. Zeta's eyes scanned the ceiling and the floors for the source of the noise, but found nothing. She was alone once again. Weapons Bay was a mess. Attempting to find a fully charged thermal core was proving exceedingly difficult, and Resin kept coming up with half-charged ones. He settled on one that appeared the most reliable and slotted it into a rifle. He then grabbed a pistol from the charging rack and a few photon grenades. Everything he threw into a duffel bag, except for the rifle, which he kept loaded and with the safety off, slung over his shoulder, ready to fire. Carefully, he set the duffel bag next to him to free up his hands while he finished what he had to do. He would give Zeta the pistol once they reached the bridge. It had been a risk sending her alone with jammers running around on his right mind, but he needed privacy for what he was about to do next. He pushed aside a large crate to expose a well-hidden secret panel. Lifting the corner of it back, it revealed a hole. Resin reached his arm inside the hole and groped around until he managed to find the pouch. With an effort, he pulled it out, feeling the weight of it in his hand. The chunk of platinum was heavy and would fetch a good price on the black market. But if they had to jump on an escape pod and blow up the ship in a hurry, it would be lost. His instincts told him to take it now, while he still could. After unzipping the duffel bag, he put the pouch inside, then closed it up again.
What you got there, boss?
The voice behind him sent shivers down his spine. It was flat and emotionless. Despite a question having been asked, there was no hint of curiosity in it. He turned around and saw Jammer standing behind him, blocking the doorway. His eyes were black as polished coal. His mouth twitched, waiting for an answer. There looked to be something moving inside, pushing against his cheeks and deforming them, like a huge hunk of bubblegum.
Jammers. You spooked me, man. Glad you're okay.
As he said that, he realized the words were not true. Jammers was not okay. Nothing was okay. Not now, and nor would it ever be again.
I asked you a question. What you got there? What you got there? What you got there? What you got there? What you got there, boss man?
The crewman began to stalk towards him, repeating the question over and over again. His voice sped up in high-pitched, clicking noise overlaid below it. Black veins pulsed his temples, his eyes reddened with burst blood vessels on both sides. Then suddenly he began to choke and gag as something emerged from his mouth, pushing past his tongue and grabbing the corners of his mouth with long, thin, insectile legs. It pulled itself out past his teeth and lips. Its antenna twitched as if sniffing the air. Something like a cockroach, but much larger, came out of his mouth. Its head came next, followed by a thorax and legs, large and spindly, dreadful and black. More were following after it. The massive bug crawled across his face, down Jammer's body, and was soon on the floor, racing towards Resin, legs clicking audibly against the hard tiles. But he forgot all about his rifle and the bag of weapons laying at his feet. There were more of the huge bugs on the ceiling, he noticed, crawling under the door and moving towards him from the corridor. He felt heavy insectile legs covered with fine hairs touch him, and the thing crawled up his boot and into his pant leg. Those horrifying, disgusting legs sticking to his skin as it moved upwards towards his crotch. The hairs of it brushed against him, and he felt an overwhelming rush of revulsion, gagging and nearly vomiting as it reached his belt, and continued up its chest. Wherever it touched him, he felt numb afterwards, as if that flesh was dead and gone. The lights in the room suddenly flickered and went out. The last thing Resin saw was Jammer standing in front of him, smiling wide as more bugs poured out from his mouth, small and large in size. He was coughing, choking, and laughing as they marched out in droves and raced towards him. Huge, mutant cockroaches crawling out from between his cracked, dark purple lips. Long before Zeta reached the bridge, she realized there was something wrong. The clicking sounds had been everywhere, and she finally managed to spot one of the creatures making the noises. Massive cockroaches. That's what they looked like anyways. And their numbers were growing larger by the second. She could tell by the increased presence of them that they were capable of multiplying rapidly. It would be only a short period of time before the ship was overrun. She rounded the corner and stopped in her tracks, gasping for air that would no longer reach her lungs. Legs buckling, she dropped to her knees and stared at what had become of the ship's bridge. The sacred thing she had aspired to command one day, now lost. At least the mystery of the missing crew members had been solved. They were hanging upside down, encased in cocoon-like tombs made of slick black webbing. Only their faces were visible, their eyes covered, but their mouths and noses consumed with organic tubing, leading up towards the ceiling. There, a huge sack was suspended, inflating and deflating chambers interlaced with veins that made it look like a massive heart slowly beating. Black ooze was seeping out from the structures connected to it, which were all across the floor. They looked like giant roots, weeping poison which spread across the ground like an oil spill. With her sharp eyes, Zeta saw what was happening. The skin of the crew members writhed, and things could be seen crawling and moving beneath the surface. They were food to these creatures, nothing more. They were being consumed from the inside out. She had seen enough. Spinning on her heel, she fled from the room just as the sound of an egg cracking could be heard. She had no desire to stick around and find out what that meant. Zeta had only one destination in mind: to get to Weapons Bay and find Resin. She just hoped it wasn't already too late. The whole ship was already infested by those things. Jammers had only gotten a bit on his shoe. What would happen if the ship docked back at Earth and was unloaded? She shuddered to think of the possibilities. They had to stop the ship from making it back. The alternative was too risky. The freighter was huge and the weapons bay was far from the bridge, but eventually she arrived there, beginning to hear the sounds of footsteps racing after her far back in the distance down the corridor. Entering weapons bay, she found that Resin was already gone, and so was every single piece of weaponry. Every gun and grenade, every piece of armor, everything had vanished. Footsteps were growing closer, she realized, moving steadily towards her. They would arrive at any second. Terrified, she pulled off one of the air vent covers nearby and went inside, closing it up behind her. The air was hot and thick in the vent. full of dust which tickled her nose. She moved forward on her hands and knees in the tight, confined space, unsure of where she was going or what she was going to do. All she knew was that the vents connected everything, and this one would take her someplace else. Maybe to the room with the escape pods. That option was beginning to look like it made the most sense. The sound of someone entering the weapons bay could be heard behind her, and she dared not move while they were speaking.
I know I saw her come in here.
Soft clicking noises could be heard beneath the distorted voice. It sounded like jammers, but who he was talking to, she couldn't say. She crept forward on her hands and knees as quietly as she could, desperate to get away from him. Where she was going, she still did not know. As she struggled forward in the small space, her heart began to jackhammer faster and faster. The darkness was total. And if something were to sneak up behind and attack her, she would not be able to run. She would not be able to fight back. This thought plagued her with worry, and she found herself hearing things and wondering what the noises meant in the darkness. Someone behind her? Up ahead, around the next corner? Who could say? A clicking, tapping noise came from somewhere far off, echoing through the blackness. It was a noise that was becoming all too familiar. Suddenly someone grabbed her leg, an ice-cold hand reached from the darkness behind her, and she thought for an instant she would die of a heart attack. Her voice caught in her throat, or she would have screamed as well. Instead, she made a choked, whimpering sound.
Don't kill me.
I ain't gonna kill you, even though I should. Well, you guys left me alone like that. Almost got murdered, you know.
Rags?
Well, it ain't your Aunt Betty.
He was wheezing and had to catch his breath after speaking this last sentence.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I think so. Man, I really gotta quit vaping. Come on, let's get moving. Where are we going anyhow? I've just been hiding in here waiting to die, more or less.
We're getting off this damn ship.
Zeta spoke with the authority of a leader. An idea was beginning to take shape in her mind.
But we need to make a stop first.
Are you sure about this? Boss is back home, we're gonna be pissed.
The bosses back home aren't the ones fighting off roaches the size of chihuahuas. We have no choice. It's either this, or by the time we get back to Earth on the escape pods, it'll be overrun.
Braggs didn't look entirely convinced, but he took the chain from around his neck and inserted the key into the slot. Zeta did the same, and they turned them clockwise at the same time, to where the setting marked engage. The proverbial big red button was just in front of them, and Zeta lifted the glass cover to take a deep breath. Then, without another word, she slammed her fist down hard on it. Nothing happened.
You gotta be kidding me.
She smashed her fist down hard again and again, then a dozen more times in rapid succession. Finally, an alarm blared to life and a voice began to speak over the PA, sounding bored and robotic.
Alert! Alert! Self-destruct protocols have been activated. Please proceed to the nearest escape pod in bays 1 through 4. This is not a drill.
It repeated the message several more times, as whooping alarms rang out in every area of the ship. Red lights were now flashing in lazy arcs as well, illuminating the ceiling in their glow.
This is not a drill.
Maintenance droids emerged from holes in the walls and began zooming around the ship in every direction, carrying out the new missions, as the ship was now destined for oblivion.
Okay,
This is not a drill.
now we can get the hell out of here.
Braggs was already climbing into the air vent, crawling away. Zeta suddenly felt something crawling up her leg, which went ice cold, and would not respond to her brain's commands once it had gone past. It clicked its way up its spine, and her knees buckled as it went up her neck, into her ear. and made a home inside her skull. This is not good. This is very much not a good thing, Zeta had time to think, before a piercing headache consumed her mind, and a ringing noise like tinnitus. After that, all was black. Braggs was watching the freighter get smaller in the distance from the safety of his escape pod. It was too bad Zeta hadn't made it. She was one of the good ones. Without her, the creatures would have gotten back to Earth and taken over. After all, it took 2 people to activate the self-destruct mechanism, and he wouldn't have had the guts to do it without her anyways. He said a silent thank you to her for her sacrifice. They'd throw a parade for her back home, after he told them about what she'd done. Mankind was no match for those Herculean roaches. The standard ones were bad enough. The freighter exploded silently in the distance, the white light of the blast burning his retinas.
Told them that ship would fall to pieces without me.
He muttered to himself, setting the positioning system controls to target home base, Earth. Once it was all programmed in, he just had to sit back, relax, and wait for the slow journey to be over. The escape pod began to pick up speed, and the stars became a blur as he raced towards his home world. Braggs closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but he couldn't. There was a noise keeping him awake, coming from near his feet.
The hell is that?
Alright, thank you for listening. This has been the first ever audio play style production on Jordan Group Horror. I want to give a huge, massive thank you to gtripp 14, decorativegentleman, and genuinelygrimm for helping me out and being my cast for this little radio play style production. If you guys enjoy this and want to hear more audio narrations of my horror stories, please check out more on my YouTube channel, Jordan Group Horror. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. And please check out gtripp 14, decorativegentleman, and genuinelygrimm on Reddit. They're all amazing horror writers in their own right. And they were very gracious and kind to help me out with this. So huge appreciation to them. Please look at the description below, and I'll link all of their stuff down there so you can check them out. Once again, thanks for listening. Please subscribe, like, comment, turn on your notifications, all that good stuff. And join me for more horror narration soon. Thank you.